Go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Santini. Welcome to the Invested in Hockey podcast. I'm here joined with
Eric Wilson.
And today is Tuesday, October 24th, aka the first day of Frozen Frenzy, hosted by ESPN, where they will be doing a NFL Red Zone type of style game where 16 games are played and 32 teams, all 32 teams in the National Hockey League will take the ice tonight. Eric, what do we think about some of these games tonight?
Honestly, I'm super excited. I think I'll just start off by saying I'm most excited for this Washington-Toronto game. I think this is pretty much an underrated rivalry, especially with the way the Caps have started out. I'm excited for some other matchups, but I want to hear what you think.
Well, there's going to be a lot of good matchups tonight, a lot of good players playing, and a big spectacle for the league. With all your stars playing at one time, they have every game playing at a 15-minute difference, I believe, or half an hour difference, which is pretty cool. Hockey fans will not miss will not lack any hockey watching opportunities tonight. But yeah, pretty cool, and a good past week of hockey we've seen. Obviously, a lot to look forward, a lot to look back and talk about. But to start us off, we got Alex DeBrincat, the former Ottawa Center and Chicago Blackhawk, who is leading the league in the NHL point rankings. And I don't know, Eric. I mean, we've seen DeBrincat. We've seen a sample size enough to tell us that, he's a good player. He's a goal scorer. He could get his points on the power play. He could do whatever he wants. But I don't know if what he's doing right now is sustainable. What do you think?
You know what? I'm going to start off by saying it's most impressive that he actually had 0 points against his former team. And I think from a Detroit standpoint, that just shows that it's not a one-man team. It's not a one-line team. You can play well and get 0 points. He had a really good game. I do think that DeBrincat could have a career year in points. And again, that's not just going to come with goals. Obviously, he had that 3-goal, 1-assist game against Calgary, which was that massive game, right? But I really think he could help a guy like Dylan Larkin to score 35 for the first time, let's call it. So I'm really excited about that. What do you think?
Well, yeah, it's pretty exciting. Like you said, with Larkin, just to extend on his line mates, he's been a playmaker too. Like, he has 8 goals in 5 games, I think, right now. And obviously a super entertaining line to watch. You got DeBrincat on the left, centered by Larkin, and then the young Lucas Raymond on the right, who I know the spotlight hasn't been on him a lot this year, but 4 assists so far and a goal to top that off. And pretty much one of the best lines in hockey, and you could see that right now. Obviously, the Red Wings, they're a big question mark as to, do they have a chance at the Stanley Cup? Can they take it all the way? A couple question marks on defense and depth, and obviously in net you have Husso and James Reimer, which Husso's another young guy that is still looking to solidify himself as a starting goaltender. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of good stuff for DeBrincat, and like you mentioned with the Ottawa Senators game, a lot of emotions that went on. I don't know if you saw, but Brady Tkachuk was actually yapping away at DeBrincat. I need to see. There's a girl on TikTok that does the lip reading. I don't know if you've ever seen her, and people always send her videos, and they do lip reading, and you could see DeBrincat yapping at Tkachuk. So I'm pretty curious what they had to say to each other. I'm sure it extends a little bit more than the game that was being played, but yeah, pretty fun watching two good teams go at it like that.
100%. I think we'll move on to our second topic, which regards Connor McDavid. We mentioned him in our first podcast when we came to our kind of maybe who the stars of the month would be. I don't think anyone really expected this injury. What do we think, and what's to come in the next 1 to 2 weeks?
Well, you're missing a player like McDavid who he's borderline irreplaceable. You can't really have a lot of Jay Woodcroft right now. Looking at his team, you can't really have any players that can step up into that McDavid role and handle the puck like he can. I know, obviously, Draisaitl, without a question, is a top 5 player in the league, and I know it's debatable, but for me, it's no question. Missing McDavid he plays such a huge role for that Oilers team, and they already started off the season limping a little bit, so it's going to be interesting what happens in the next week. But yeah, I don't know. With the line mates that he's been going in and out with, and Nugent Hopkins, Evander Kane, and Draisaitl, I know they've been switching that lineup, but what do you think their team looks like this following week?
You know what? I think they can play with lines all they want, but I think the best idea for them is to kind of stick with Dry at the 1C position. Again, I know he likes to play wing sometimes, so you're going to have to put him there. Slot Nugent Hopkins on that second line. At least try and make a top 6 out of it, right? the big question mark is if a guy like Connor Brown can step up. He's got 0 points in these 5 games, you call it. Really, really underwhelming so far. My biggest concern is where the Oilers are going to sit come 20 games into the season, right? So right now they're 1-3-1. They got 3 points on the season. You look at Vegas. Vegas has 12 points in 6 games. They're 6-0. These next 3 games are not going to be easy. You have the Minnesota Wild tonight, 9 p.m., and then you have the Rangers, and then you have the Flames for this Heritage Classic, which, what do you think about this Heritage Classic?
Yeah, talking about the Heritage Classic, it's something so fun to go watch, and just the outdoor environment. I believe the game's going to be played in Edmonton this year. I don't know if you want to fact check that for me.
Yeah, it is in Edmonton,
but Edmonton, yeah. You know, it's just really cool. It reminds me, obviously, like the Winter Classic, and growing up, you get to watch all the documentaries, and leading up to it on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, they would do the Winter Classic. It's something for McDavid to miss, and just as a hockey fan, I'm sure 50% of hockey fans could say, I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch the game anymore, because you have a lot of people looking for the opportunity to watch the best hockey player in the world play in such a cool event. And I don't know, it's going to be tough for them, but pretty much taking a look at their lineup and going off of what you were saying about Connor Brown, they have him on the third line, and it's weird because you bring in a player like Connor Brown who can't really be slotted on just any NHL hockey team. I know McDavid had a little bit of a role of bringing him in, but they have him on the third line playing with Dylan Holloway and Ryan McLeod, which Holloway's a little bit of a project still, and McLeod's kind of finding his own role. But it's going to be a tough season for Connor Brown, where he could have been playing with McDavid, having a 30-plus goal season just like in their junior year. But a lot of changes coming up for the Edmonton Oilers. We'll see as we reach the third week of the NHL season what it looks like without their captain. But, yeah, should be pretty interesting for them.
For sure.
So
For sure. Next week we're going to start talking about Jack Hughes and really what he could do this year, not just for the Devils, but where can he solidify himself in that center ranking, forward rankings, even just kind of how this can affect his future.
So I like what you said, where can he solidify himself in the center rankings, because center is one of the most important positions in hockey when you look at all the contracts and all the players that are paid so much. Austin Matthews with the highest contract in NHL history, just signed just about 2 months ago. And yeah, I don't know, for Jack Hughes, just kind of building his all-around game and really making the Devils a good contender is something that I view as most important, and really just staying healthy. I know that a couple years ago he had his issues of staying healthy when the Devils weren't too much of Stanley Cup contenders, but it looks like he's really taken a step this year. He had 4 points in that Islanders game, 2 goals, 2 assists, and the overtime winner. But Jack Hughes definitely a player to watch this year, and I think for years to come as well. What do you think?
Yeah, in terms of point totals, I think the 100-point mark is something we could see Jack Hughes reach. When you look at point totals from last year, we saw a guy like Jason Robertson put up like a 120, I believe, right? And like the question is, can Jack Hughes put up, call it 130, or is that something that's like unsustainable? The reason I say that is he's just so dangerous in every period. You're down to the Isles by 2 goals, and then you have Jack Hughes come score 2 goals to basically win the game for them.
I think what separates this year from last year for Jack Hughes is he's been surrounded by a little bit more better players in the regular season. Like they have the new additions of Tyler Toffoli, and I guess you can't really call Timo Meier a new addition because they had that little splash of him in the playoffs, but really kind of what he's going to bring to the team, and can he find his true form on a line with Jack Hughes. So it looks like management surrounded Jack with some really good players for the regular season, and I think it is possible that, I think you said 130. Yeah. It is possible, but the topic of health is definitely something to consider, and if he could play 82 games, it's going to make a strong case for hitting that 130-plus mark for points.
For sure, and the question is, like, will he have an opportunity to speak up about who he wants to play with come playoff time, right? I don't really know what the best line for him is, but I think that putting him with Jesper Bratt, and then you have so much flexibility on that left wing, right? Who knows if you slide Tyler Toffoli up on that top line. He played a lot with Andre Palat last year, but I don't know if that's something that – I don't know if Palat's really the case for top line minutes, right? It's just It's a really good question, but I think they're going to have success no matter what offensively. And I think to talk about our first podcast, Stephen, we talked about their defensive aspect and how their defensive game can improve with guys like Luke Hughes, Dougie Hamilton being kind of offensive defensemen, right? So are they going to build the offense around an entire game or just the offensive aspect?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It makes sense. But yeah, for me, I think as of right now, I have Jack Hughes for my Hart Trophy winner. That's what I think, especially with the players that he's going to be around, the direction that the Devils are going right now. All signs point to positive aspects for him and a finishing season. And another player in the league is Cale Makar. Could he be a lock for the Norris? I know last year people would call it a down year, just like how some could say Austin Matthews' year was a little bit of a down year. But I think I think Cale Makar can really solidify himself as the game's best defenseman by winning the Norris this year. What do you think?
Honestly, 100%. When I saw that Bobby Orr stat against Cale Makar, I was baffled. Honestly, as a Bruins fan, I thought this would be something that Bobby Orr held forever when it was, the first 230 games. The amount of points that Cale Makar can put up in a down year, like you said, is ridiculous. I think last year, I honestly think there was only a few defensemen you could argue had a better year, right? And one of them who wasn't nominated for that Norris was Rasmus Dahlin. But when you look at all-around game, it's just like it's crazy what Makar can do, right? And it's more like that speed, skill, everything, right? And of course, he's around good players on the power play, but that's going to help make him that Norris lock, I guess you could say. So I'm going to go 100% all in on him too, and I'm going to agree with you that he's a lock for the Norris come a couple months in.
Yeah, it's a little funny too because we say down year, and all offseason everyone said down year, and even near the playoffs, everyone was saying, what's wrong with Cale Makar, what's going on? But when you look at his stats, he played 60 games, and he had 66 points. And we've had this topic a couple times of players being injured after that extra month and a half of playing in the playoffs. And it does take a toll on your body. Some players like McKinnon, Makar, Rantanen, all that the players from that Stanley Cup winning team, it almost felt that the start of next season they started a little bit slower, could be a little bit more wear and tear on the body, and totally understandable. But it feels a little bit weird to say that a point per game defenseman had a down year. But yeah, I don't know, a little bit funny to me, but yeah, definitely a lock for Cale Makar as the Norris for this year.
Yeah, and it brings up the conversation of inflated scoring being obviously it's something that in the last few years we've pretty much seeing scoring just gone up and up. I think this is something where we could see similar point totals to last year where let's call it 3-4 defensemen are point per game defensemen, right? I don't think many defensemen are going to score more than 80 points, right? And again, I don't think Erik Karlsson's going to do it. I don't think anyone from Tampa like Sergachev or Hedman's going to do it. I think a lot of these defensemen really need to shape their games around that all-around play where you're built around a team, right? So you might have Victor Hedman being the top power play defenseman for 40 games, but then you might have Sergachev being the top power play defenseman for 40 games, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to build your team around the best power play. What's best? You got to give your guys a rest, and whether or not Cale Makar plays 27 minutes a night, that's what it's about, right? You don't want to be burnt out for the playoffs. We saw them lose to the Kraken. I don't know if that was a factor, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and totally right. Just kind of having the versatility to throw any defenseman back there. And with Taves, Byram, and Samuel Girard, which, I'm a big fan of him, watching him play. I know he's not very flashy or, a big offensive defenseman, but just kind of players that you could trust in Makar's absence if needed to hop on that power play and quarterback it. So I think the Avalanche are in a good spot this year and, could definitely go back into that Stanley Cup mindset that they were in just 2 seasons ago, for sure.
For sure. Just before we move on to our next topic, I did want to bring up a little reminiscing from the past. I miss Nikita Zadorov when he played on Colorado. I really miss that name as one of those 5'6" defensemen. I don't know if you remember the big hit on Mark Scheifele. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the biggest hits in the last 10 years, but I just wanted to mention Zadorov's name. I'm sure we have some viewers from the Buffalo area or wherever Zadorov kind of gets brought up. So moving on to our Toronto Maple Leafs talk. We have Sammy versus Woll. What do you think of the Leafs goaltending situation? And again, it's an 82-game season, so feel free to talk about the future right now.
Yeah, so just kind of like you said, talking about the future, and I love keeping an open mindset for the entire season because, especially as Leafs viewers, a lot of Leafs fans in the Toronto area, everyone likes to press that big red button to alert. What's the issue? What's going on? Samsonov let 3 goals in on 4 shots. What's going on? But in the grand scheme of things, Sammy's still a good goalie. He's proved himself a little bit to be extremely talented. And you have a young guy like Wall, which has been great. He played amazing in that Tampa Bay game. He brought them all the way back from down 3-1 to win in overtime. And just a very talented young goaltender. But in the grand scheme of things, can a young goaltender really lead a Stanley Cup opportunistic team to a great season? I'm not sure. Looking at someone like Samsonov, who's played for a couple teams, been around the NHL for a couple years, he's lost some big games in Washington and just kind of felt what winning and losing is like. Maybe I trust him a little bit more in an 82-game season. But right now, I think the Leafs are in a good tandem. They have a good tandem with their goaltenders, and as long as they could sustain the relationship between the two goalies, I think they're going to be able to make it work, kind of like Luongo and was it Corey Schneider? They had that.
For sure. There's going to be some competition. There might not be all positives. To build on what you're going to say, I think the one tandem I'm going to bring up is Tuukka Rask and Jaro Halak. That year where Halak was a stud, started 30 games for them. We saw it more evident in Ullmark and Swayman, where, again, you have Swayman, I think, played 21, 22 games. Ullmark did almost get overworked last year, but we saw it work for the regular season. I think if the Leafs can do that, I think Rask is the one guy where, again, they made a cup run. They went to Game 7 against St. Louis, and I think the true reason for that was Tuukka.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a great goalie tandem, one of the best of all time. And when you look at Samsonov and Woll, could they be in that conversation of two of the most talented goalies going forward? But what do you think? Who do you think is the best goalie tandem of all time that you've watched, that you've seen maybe bring to a playoff, carry their team to a playoff chance, carry their team to a Stanley Cup, just kind of as a viewer?
Honestly, my number one, I guess, it's hard to bring up a tandem, but the one goalie I'm going to talk about, just because we already mentioned it, but when Jaro Halak played on the Montreal Canadiens, I've never seen a goalie play so well in the playoffs and not win a cup and not go to the finals. I think Montreal went to maybe the 3rd round that year. Mm-hmm. And it was just crazy. I was a young kid watching that, and it was like, okay, this is nuts. Honestly, when I think of the Leafs, obviously there's not much playoff success you can talk about, but as a Bruins fan, I got to go with Tuukka Rask or Halak that one year.
That 1 year that you're mentioning for your goalie tandem, Tuukka and Halak, was that when Tuukka came back from injury, or he wasn't injured, or was he injured? Remember, he came back mid-season.
He came back. Honestly, I want to say it was like 2018 with Halak, though. It was. They just had an incredible team that year, and it was.
That was the my question is, remember the season that Tuukka came back near the end of the year?
Yeah. Are you talking about the year he had to leave in the playoffs, like the bubble year, or before that?
No, he left in the bubble year, missed at loss.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Where he came back, played about 10 games, and then retired.
Yeah, and that obviously was the end of it all, where it's like, okay, he had a great career. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think it's kind of a bit of underrated topic where, like, he should be in that 2010 to 2020 decade talk of who maybe one of the best goalies was. I guess the only other guy I can bring up is Johnny Quick from that 2010 to 2010 era. 2010 to 2020. But that is tough bringing up all those Bruins teams because there's just so many goalies we've been through. But
definitely one of the best goalies of all time. Someone that doesn't really have stats that jump out on the paper. But turning to the new topic of today and 2024 and onwards, what the NHL is going to look like with all these stats is NHL Edge, and I know you want to take a quick second to talk about how cool that new system's been and just kind of a little bit about it.
Yeah, so this is something where, again, I think when the NHL promotes things, this is like this should be the top of their priorities, but basically NHL player tracking data is now available to the public. It's a new stats portal, and I'm going to bring up a few of these guys that you're not probably going to believe some of these, but max shot power goes to Travis Sanheim of the Philadelphia Flyers. I think he's severely underrated just because people don't watch many Philly games, but I'm not sure what you think of that, but you might be a little more impressed with Quinton Byfield being the sixth best max speed this season. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I know he's a big guy. He's like, what, 6'4", I believe, maybe even more. But you don't really see a lot of big guys like that. You'd think more DeBrincat or someone of that size, maybe smaller, to be one of the faster skaters. But yeah, Byfield, definitely a young guy that's got some jets to him and looking to form a little bit of his own on that first line in LA, and hopefully a big year for him. But yeah, definitely a great player that in a couple years should be the cornerstone of maybe a Stanley Cup winner with the LA Kings and just a really good team overall.
Yeah, now this last stat here, I want to hear if this makes you worried at all about the Tampa Bay Lightning, but Jonas Johansson faces more high-quality shots than anyone. So when we look at a Vasi return in a few weeks, I guess maybe 6 to 7 weeks still, do we think this Lightning team is going to be like that team from a few years ago, or what do we think here?
I think they've made a lot of changes over the years. Like, you're missing some of, what's the best way to explain this? I think what makes a Stanley Cup team is your bottom players, and that's your bottom six line. You can have what the Leafs have had the past 5, 6, 7 years, having Matthews, having Marner, having Willie, having players like Kadri, like they had, Phil Kessel, all this offensive star power on the front, on the top six. But it's really the bottom six that's really propelled them to be some of the better, one of the best teams in NHL history. So I don't know, missing some of the new players, it might be a little bit of a change. But like you said, with Johansson facing the most, was it the most shots or the best shot opportunities?
Yeah, best shot opportunities, which
yeah, it leaves a little bit of a question mark for me with Vasi's return. But the only question mark is Vasilevsky is undeniably the best goalie in the league. He should stay that way for the next 2 to 3 years, and just a very solid option in net that the Tampa Bay Lightning will be able to look forward to in the new year.
Yeah, and we honestly got to give credit to what the Lightning have done outside of their cup. So like, the guys that they brought in, Tanner Jeannot, I'm a big fan of. I think he led the league in hits last year, and again, he can also score some goals, get you some apples. That third line center and Anthony Cirelli, he although he's been through his injuries, he's a stud. He's got speed. He's really good on the penalty kill, which I think again really matters outside your top six. Michael Asemimont, for this guy, scored a nice goal the other day on that tic-tac-toe from Kucherov and Point. But I really think they have the depth. They got Connor Sheary, some veterans in there. Even Calvin DeHaan, who played on the Canes last year. But I think the Lightning could be in contention for another cup, no doubt. And like you said, Vasi is the best goalie in the league, and he's proven it.
Yeah, 100% agree. But all right, we'll finish our last segment with Eric's predictions for the upcoming week. So whenever you're ready, I will shoot you some of the games coming up, and you'll let me know.
For sure, and yeah, we'd love to hear from our viewers what you guys think of these games if you haven't watched them yet.
Yep, for sure. All right, so starting tonight, October 24th, we have the Edmonton Oilers facing the Minnesota Wild.
I'm going to go to Wild here. I think Kirill scores a goal. Wild win.
Perfect. October 25th, we have the Washington Capitals at the New Jersey Devils.
I got to fade the Devils here. I'm going to go Caps. Alex Ovechkin's going to have a great game tonight and then move forward with an even better game against the Devils.
Perfect. October 26th, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs visiting the Dallas Stars.
That's a tough one. Honestly, that's one of those games that I don't even know what to say off the start, but I'm going to go with the Dallas Stars just because they're at home. That's really the only advantage I see there.
The undefeated Dallas Stars in regulation team at that.
Wow. All right.
October 27th, we have the Buffalo Sabres at the New Jersey Devils.
You know what? I'm not impressed with Buffalo this season yet. I'm not sold on them. I'm going to go with the Devils. Again, that offensive talent, it's right there. So.
Yep. Next up, the Canadian matchup, Winnipeg Jets visiting the Montreal Canadiens.
Let's go Winnipeg here. I think Scheifele started out great. I think we talked about him a couple weeks ago, but honestly, I think Kyle Connor can shoot the puck. They got more weapons than the Habs do, no doubt. Let's go Jets here.
Yep. Sunday, October 29th, we have the Battle of Alberta, Calgary at Edmonton, the Heritage Classic.
Honestly, I'm just going to say one thing. Those big guns better show up for the Flames. Hooby-Dooby-Doo and Nazem Kadri. Let's go Flames here.
Sweet. And our last one is on Monday, October 30th. We have two of the Calder favorites right now, Chicago Blackhawks and Arizona. Connor Bedard versus Logan Cooley.
I think this is going to be a good low-scoring game where, honestly, I think the goalies are going to be the kind of stars in this game. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for Bedsy and Cooley, but I'm going to go with Arizona here. I think they're kind of showing what they're made of, whether or not they make the playoffs or not. They're going to put up more wins than last season, undoubtedly. And, Keller should show up. Cooley could show up. Nice Calder matchup, like you said. And, yeah.
A lot of good games to look forward to and a great week of NHL coming up. We are very excited to chat next week about everything NHL, and thank you for joining.